Our final speaker of the day will be Benjamin Särkkä, and he will talk about why hackers matter. Welcome, Benjamin.
All right. Hi, everyone. Let's start by looking at a video some of you may have seen, some of you may have not.
You have new challenges today. Sensitive data is transmitted over encrypted channels. Often the information you want is not transmitted at all. Your target may be outside your monitoring domain. Is passive monitoring enough? You need more. You want to look through your target's eyes. You have to hack your target. You have to hit many different platforms. You have to overcome encryption and capture relevant data. Being stealth and untraceable. Deployed all over your country. Exactly what we do. Remote control system Galileo.
Right, so that's a group or a company from Italy that got hacked last year. And their business model might not be what somebody would say ethical. Their whole thing is, let's go to a country and take over all of the citizens in that country. Let's set up a fake base station. Let's put up a system to capture everything that we hold near and dear. Steal our privacy. Show us in a way, or try to control us, or give the tools away to control us to whatever government is working for or who's paying them the most at that time. Their business ethos was that we don't sell to the bad guys. We won't do business with the bad guys. But their deployments have been found in places like Syria and Congo and Afghanistan. And I'm not sure how well you know geography, but if you do at all, you might realize that most of these places are either dictatorships or fairly close to one of those things. Now, we wouldn't know a lot about Hacking Team if not for the fact that they got hacked. Because they got hacked, all of their source code was leaked online, and because it leaked, we could look at what the applications look like. We could look at what the software looked like, and we had a chance to identify the signatures that they were using. We had a chance to fight back. We had a possibility to regain our privacy. I'm Benjamin Särkkä, as introduced before. I'm talking to you here as a private person. My views do not represent either the Disobey organization nor the company that I work for. There's my socials if you want to follow me. And yeah, I've been doing this for a fairly long time. I cracked my first password when I was around 8. Because my dad decided it would be fun to block the operating system from me. And I really like playing around with the operating system. So I decided to guess his password by utilizing a technique I now know is called brute forcing. So I sat there on my dad's computer for 2 weeks, typing different passwords until it worked. And I got in. And the feeling of success, the feeling of accomplishment I got from that, from getting into a system, from actively getting control of a system, was so great that I think it's still my driving motivator to this day. It's amazing how blissfully unaware most people are about how important password security is even today. But I'm going to get back to that later. First, let's talk a bit about where security is coming from. So this is a diagram of the first lock, the first security control, or the first security appliance. It's a lock from Mesopotamia, and it's around 4,000 years old, or not the picture, the lock it's portraying is around 4,000 years old. And for around 3,800 years or so, security didn't change much. The basic design of a lock was essentially the same. You had thing that goes in and it turns and your lock opens. You can enter. You could, instead of paying for armed guards, you could buy a lock. You could secure your stuff. At the turn of the century, a guy called A.Z. Hobbs decided that he would build a better lock, or actually Joseph Bramah before him built a better lock, but after Bramah, A.C. Hobbs built the protector lock. And the protector lock had a very, very interesting sales technique. What A.C. Hobbs did was he went to places that had his competitors' locks. He picked the lock, showing them why it sucked, and sold them his own. That's the first pen tester. That's the first professional hacker. And he had a very, very good technique. He was one of the best locksmiths. He even managed to break the unbreakable Bramah security lock of the time. Here at Crystal Palace in London before it was bombed in the World War. Now, what happened when A.C. Hobbs picked this security lock, when he decided to show the world that the security control that they had been relying on to make sure that nobody gets at their stuff was not broken, is that he changed security. He changed how security must be viewed, and he changed it to a function in time. And ever since then, we've known for certain that whatever security controls we put in place, whatever security we think we have, it's only a matter of time until someone breaks it. It's only a matter of time until someone gets in, or someone picks it, or sits there and guesses the password. Now, the thing is, most people haven't realized this yet. Most people still think that they can buy an antivirus product, use only a VPN, or buy the newest thing with blinking lights and feel secure. They think that this is it. I am now at a perfect security posture. I don't need to change anything. I don't need to continue fine-tuning because nobody is trying to do anything. But that's not the case. It's a constantly evolving field, and it does change. And to prove that point, I've put out this small thing. But most of your computer people, so you know this, I don't need to explain to you how this works. But essentially in the 90s, hobbyist hackers did it for fun, for fame, for kudos, to be in a position of good reputation, or bad reputation, or street cred, or whatever you want to call it. After that, carding started with places like Carter Planet, and I forget the other big one, Dark Market, maybe. That was essentially stealing credit card numbers, selling credit card numbers, skimming. A lot of different techniques were utilized and used. In 2005, hacktivism started being big on the scene. We had groups like Anonymous doing large denial of service attacks on different payment infrastructure. We had a lot of people that started hacking because of an ideological motivation or a political motivation, just to prove a point, just to do something against the machine, against the system. In 2012, Snowden told us that whatever even tiny bit of privacy we assumed we had, were gone. There's none. We have nothing left that we can protect our privacy with. We can't even rely on current cryptography because most governments are trying to install backdoors, or at least force some sort of backdoors into the software we're trying to use. So during the last year, I was trying to make sense of the situation where we have companies protecting the privacy against the governments that are supposed to protect the people. To me, that's wrong somehow. People should not have to be afraid of their governments. Governments should have to be afraid of their people. Now, that's a fairly famous quote that some of you may have known, and if you do, I'll give you a t-shirt. But it doesn't end there, because we're at 2017 now. And or at least to me, I think every week I'm reading about the new large leak. Hundreds of millions, tens of millions, tens of thousands, 50s of thousands, and fake news. And elections, hacking elections. And it's starting to feel like we no longer have a democracy. We've all gone completely crazy. We're suddenly in this dystopian dark future where drones are utilized to attack power plants, where electrical grids are being taken over by crazy black hat hackers, or elections are being rigged in favor of a political agenda. In places like the United States, they recently had a fairly clear case of tampering with elections, to the point that their current president won the election with less than the popular vote. Now, here in Finland, that seems odd, because we don't understand electrolytes and super electrolytes, but I don't think the American people do either. The point I'm trying to make here is that if we don't do something about this, if we don't engage, if we just remain outside and become complacent with this weird world we're living in, we're going to end up with something that's a lot worse before it gets any better. And even that's not bad enough. Like, we've gone from malware that had one strain to malware that has 100,000 new strains every single day. Polymorphic code. We've gone from people doing it for laughs, for doing cracking demos on computers, to people writing targeted payloads that'll be used once against one single target. We've gone to a place where we can have memory-based network worms, essentially botnets within corporations. There's one flaw, one weakness in our security controls. They come in and it spreads, and it's a persistent memory-based network. Now, if you don't understand what that means, that's perfectly okay, but what you should be able to understand is that most hackers today are actually living off the land. They're not using attack frameworks, they're not using, or they are still using attack frameworks, but once they get in, they start using PowerShell, they start using Active Directory exploitation or normal administrative tools. They're not launching away exploits, they're not using Metasploit's autopawn feature. They're actually seasoned professionals that do this for a living. So, what can you do to protect yourself? You can start by creating an alias. Now, as most of you know, an alias is something fairly common, at least here in assembly. It's easy to introduce yourself as, or in my case, hi, I'm not my Nick, instead of hi, I'm Benjamin. But you can take it a bit further. You can use a part of your name as your Facebook alias if you want to use your real name, or you can use a separate name. You should, when you're online, you should act as everything is public. Every single day, every single second. Covering your webcam seems like a stupid idea, but then you read about stuff like Vault 7 and Eternal Blue and all of the interesting, funny little tools that the CIA, the NSA, the FSB, and all these other fancy three-letter agencies are cooking up to mess with us. Or you hear about Hacking Team, and you look them up, and or you hear about Vulpen, and you realize that there's an entire market out there that is based around selling 0 days to attack us. There's an entire breed of security researchers that go around finding vulnerabilities in software, finding 0 days in software, and instead of notifying the vendors, instead of telling somebody that could do something about it, they sell it to the highest bidder. They sell it to the guy that can pay the most. Last year, a remote code execution bug for the iPhone or the iOS operating system sold for 1 million. Instead of notifying Apple, somebody took 1 million, probably sold it to some government agency. We still don't know whether or not it's been used or not. We just know that it was sold, that it's out there. It was sold to a company called Simperium, by the way. So, really, cover your webcam. It's cheap to buy a piece of tape. Enforce password lock. If you have a device and it's not locked by your password at all times during all days, you're probably not doing enough to secure yourself. And this should start becoming common sense. Two-factor authentication. Now, I'm hoping, who doesn't know what two-factor authentication is? Everybody. Who uses two-factor authentication for all of their services? It's about half. So we have a group of smart people at a computer conference where everybody knows about the security control, but only half of you use it. Now, why are only half of you using the security control? Is your password good enough? Are you not afraid that you're gonna get hacked? Don't you care about your stuff? Maybe you think you're not important enough, or that nobody will ever do anything to try to mess with you or embarrass you. Now, talking about passwords, how many utilize a password that are 8 characters or less? Nobody. That's really good. 10 characters or less. All right, so 8 characters with modern GPU architecture takes around 15 seconds to crack. Even if it has fancy special characters, even if it has zeros and big alphanumeric letters and numbering. And a long string of random letters and numbers is really good if you're using a password manager. But it's really hard if you're not. And most people can't be bothered. I don't know why that is, but for some reason, most people can't be bothered to use a password manager. So I've tried to take this pragmatic approach. To create a good password, go home after this. Pick your 5 favorite books, throw them randomly on the floor, and take the second word from all of the pages. You now have a random string with high enough entropy to be almost impossible to crack with modern hardware. And it'll be easy to remember. Now, there's an XKCD for this, but I'm not putting it on my slide because of copyright reasons. But the point I'm trying to make is that we've been thinking about security from an ass-backwards point of view for a really long time. And I think it's really, really time to change that. So, before we know how to protect things, we need to know what we need to protect. And to figure that out, we need to know how big our digital footprint is. Now, how many of you routinely do vanity searches? Yeah, that's a really good practice. At least you're aware of the information that's out there, right? How many of you do the same with your phone number or your address? That's 3 people. Just saying. That's an equally important piece of information. How about your address or your social security number? How many of you do reverse image searches on your most popular images? Again, that's 3 people. I was expecting more of you guys. I'm sorry. The point here is that without the information about what's out there, without the information about what we need to protect, we'll have no possibility of understanding how to protect it. We don't know what security controls are needed for what places. We don't know what amount of effort we should put in to secure a certain type of artifact. The good news is that most hackers aren't out to get you, and they're not wizards either. Hackers aren't these magical species of a human that can just look at a computer and take it over, or say bad things to a car and make it explode. It takes work, it takes understanding, and they need to utilize vulnerabilities that can be found by white hats, by people like me. Now, what we try to do is we try to get the information out there, so the general public, so you and hopefully the people who are watching, have a better understanding of where you could place those security controls, be they then a padlock or a biometric sensor or an armed guard even maybe, if you have something that requires that. The whole idea is to have the appropriate amount at the appropriate place. It's not rocket science or brain surgery. So, why are hackers needed? Because solutions matter. And any problem you might face can be overcome. All you need is a bit of creative thinking, some sort of vision or sense of clarity about what you want to accomplish, where you want to go, how you want to approach it. I don't know. Solutions really matter. And if we do work together, if we find enough people to solve the hard problems of today, we are for sure going to overcome whatever problems we want to do. We can write new crypto. We can write new tools. We can create new communication channels. We can create software that is more secure. Not unhackable, but more secure. And we can do that if we work together as a community, if we work together as people, as humans, instead of putting people into boxes, instead of thinking about people as resources or unnecessary assets. Something that companies tend to do. Not all of them, but some of them. Now, why do I say that solutions matter? It's because the problems are also created by us. So, the more problems we create, the more we'll require people to solve them. So, more hackers, more problems, more solutions. Everybody's happy. Now, how do you suppose you could get started? I propose you join a bug bounty program. There's two good ones I know of, HackerOne and BugCrowd. Both of them will pay you money to break stuff at home in your underwear if you want to. And that's a really good way of making money. That's a really, really smart way of utilizing your free time. Now, some of the best bug bounty hunters are making towards $500,000 or $600,000 a year by now. That's a lot of scratch. I'm guessing that's more than maybe not all of you, but most of you make. And it makes sense to me to use these skills, if you have them, for good, instead of sitting at home or not doing anything about it. And it's not hard to get started. All you have to do is try. If it doesn't work the first time, you try a bit harder. And if it still doesn't work, you just don't give up. And at some point, you learn. And after that, you start getting better. And then you start understanding things, and you can start sharing, and you can start giving back. Now, I was thinking of speaking for a lot longer, but I seem to have run through this presentation. If you want to, we have this conference where we try to get together and we try to think of these solutions. We're actually launching our call for program today. I have cards where you can find the URL, and I have some t-shirts if you're interested. Our theme this year is robots are a multi-planet species, and that's because they've actually managed to go farther into the universe than we have. They've actually managed to solve problems like what will happen if the Earth just suddenly stops being? Robots won't die out. Humans will. So if you have an idea, if you have a thought that you think matters, if you have a skill that you think you can teach somebody else, or if you have a want for a skill that you want to learn, come say hi at the event. That's my presentation for today. I'm sorry it was a bit short. I thought I had more slides. Yeah, any questions?
Thank you, Benjamin.
No.
There seems to be quite many questions. Can you raise your hands a little bit higher? Thank you.
Yeah. I can't hear you because you need a mic.
Well, I was wondering about, you said vanity searches or something. Isn't it a bad practice to give your personal information associated with your IP to Google or some other search engine?
Well, if you think they don't have that, I have bad news for you.
All right.
It's like the digital footprint is essentially in two parts. There's an active part and a passive part. The active part is whatever information we produce willingly at any media, essentially on social media, forums, wherever. Like we post stuff. That's our digital footprint. That's our active digital footprint. Our passive digital footprint is our IP, our browser plugins, our geolocation, our EXIF data on our pictures, like all of this that can be used by advertising networks, by Google, by Facebook to track what we're doing online, to see how so Google already knows. They have a very, very good idea of who you are. They have, not only that, you're part of a multiple different study groups about how you behave to certain types of search results and certain types of search automation. Because what they're trying to do is create a search engine that will give you the information you need without you having to type in the correct search terms. They want to understand what you actually want to find and not only bring what you're searching for. They're trying to build an artificial intelligence to help you with that. Whether or not it's scary or not is up to personal preference.
Do you think deep learning algorithms could search for exploits instead of people?
They already do, but neural networks and machine learning is a lot of hype right now. It's the new buzzword. So the same as threat intel. It's still just IOC feeds. Like most machine learning algorithms are just Markov chains. What to do if this happens? It's not an intelligent enough thing to actually understand a lot yet. So, although I'm not saying that Markov chains are bad or machine learning is bad, I'm just saying that if you put shit in, you get shit out. And it's all about how good your data is and how valid that data is for the purpose you're trying to accomplish. And if you're using automated fuzzers, if you're using machine learning attacks, then you're going to need a lot of data. And at last year's DEF CON, they had the DARPA cyber challenge where 7 artificial machines were put into a network to attack each other, right? And they were completely autonomous. They were trying to find problems, vulnerabilities in software that they weren't aware of. They needed to first map the network, understand the network, then find the vulnerability, write an exploit to that vulnerability, and then actually exploit that and patch the same vulnerability in themselves. They were running for 2 days, I think, and then the winning machine was a machine called Mayhem. And the Mayhem machine was then put into the DEF CON CTF, capture the flag, against human players, human teams. And during the first hours, it did fairly well. It was at 3rd place. Then the humans banded together and decided to launch a denial of service attack against the machine, and it dropped off the scoreboard. So we're still winning, right? But the point is, Mayhem was a supercomputer. It was a large rack that required a separate power feed directly from the main line. It required separate cooling. They needed to build an entire infrastructure just to cool those 7 supercomputers that were on stage. That's not something that you will have resources to do at home. So it's theoretically possible, but we're not there yet.
Do we have any more questions?
Right. Also, come get your T-shirt. Everybody who asks us a question gets a T-shirt.
A bit more of a personal question.
Yeah?
How did you start out as a white hat?
I don't know. I've never had a need to be bad to other people or be an evil person, I suppose. Maybe it's my upbringing, or maybe I just think that it's a character weakness to do bad things to other people, especially if you're in a position of power. Utilizing that position of power against a weaker individual is unfair. It's being a bully. It's being dumb. So, I don't know. I try to be a better person than that.
Okay, first you two over there, and then I'll go to you two.
Maybe it was good that I left this much time for questions.
Well, I don't actually have a question. I have a criticism when you mentioned using sort of random words put together. I mean, have you ever heard of something called a dictionary attack?
Yes, I cracked a lot of passwords. And having enough entropy is what matters, not the words. So a dictionary attack only works if the words are in order. If you can like take the entire Bible and take the sentence from the Bible in that order, then it works. The same with rainbow tables against hashes. It doesn't work with combining words. I mean, it could, but you're gonna...
Yeah, but you're talking about a rather simple dictionary attack. Or something more complex ones, say you have... In English, for instance, it's you can crack it a rather pretty high percentage with less than 1,000 words. And 1,000 words, yeah, doesn't take particularly long unless you have trying to have a whole novel like long passwords. So just some more criticism that don't just sort of take random words. You do need to sort of turn them a bit into leet speak type.
Well, maybe. I mean,
I do sort of like a dictionary type, but I do sort of essentially turn it into leet speak. So it has the entropy there, so you can't really.
No, I see what you're saying, and you're absolutely correct. It'll be a better password if you have numbers and special characters and big and small letters. But having a 25-character password is going to take a really long time to crack. And if you have a 25-character password and you change it like every half year, there's not a computer that's good enough that'll get through that.
Yeah, but if you're just using words with a dictionary, I mean, you can basically do a slightly simplified English language dictionary. Less than 1,000 words, it can crack those rather quickly. If you're just using words without without sort of modifying those, and just random words, and then basically iterating through that. It's slightly modified brute force, essentially. Brute force with words instead of characters. But yeah, that's my criticism, is that it's not...
Yeah, it's a fair criticism, and I understand where you're coming from, but I think you're missing the fact that for the dictionary attack to work against a 25-character password, you need to know that it's a 25-character password, and then you're just gonna crack all the words that hit a 25-character password. So if the attacker doesn't know the length of your password, he doesn't or she doesn't know the complexity of the words you're using, nor does she know how you're gonna utilize those words in your password, they're still going to have to crack a 25-character random string. And a 25-character random string is really hard to crack. It's not like that. It's not impossible, even with a really good word list. I mean, we can do a challenge on this. Like, I can give you a high entropy 5-character string, a hash for that. I'll give it to you later tonight. And you send me an email when you've cracked it.
Well, I've sort of actually, people already studied this. I don't have it right now at hand, but yeah, I mean, if it's just sort of words, still dictionary attacks. This sort of basically trying combinations of words, essentially. I mean, that's my understanding is that you can have a rather high success rate at that.
Yeah, and there's ways of being better or using better masking for better password cracking. And there's a lot of really good tools for how to crack passwords. It's just a rule of thumb of how to create a fairly strong password that will last you probably a fairly amount of time. The thing is, most criminals are lazy and they'll go after the least secure passwords first. And if you're part of a leak and you have a 25-character password, they're not going to be cracking your password first. You'll have time to change it before they get to you. Do you follow my reasoning?
Yes, I follow your reasoning, but if they do sort of... I know this is basically really drawing it on, and a lot of people are like, oh, can I get my question now? But, so, yeah, but, I mean, it's...
maybe we can...
Personally, I think that it's better than nothing, but it's still not as good as it should be.
Well, we shouldn't be using passwords at all, to be honest.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct in that.
So, but we're not there yet. That's why I need hackers. That's why we need hackers. That's why we need to solve the hard problems. Maybe you'll be the first to create the right authentication method that can be utilized without a password. Maybe it'll be something simple like the weight of your veins in the body or how quickly your blood flows. And you can just look at the webcam and it'll read it from your eyes and you can log in. That would be awesome. Like, I wouldn't mind having an authentication method that works like that, but it's a matter of doing things. But maybe we can take this conversation like after the...
Yeah, probably other people would prefer that.
Okay, you mentioned two-factor authentication, and it's a rather old concept. What do you think about the future concept of the authentication, like continuous authentication and stuff like that? What do you think it's going into the systems or web pages in the near future?
That's a really good question. It depends on the system you're trying to secure. The level of security you need is dependent on the criticality of the data or the importance of the data behind whatever you're trying to secure. Having continuous authentication or having continuous key exchanges, for example, is a really good thing for really secure systems, but it's not something that your average users will be able to implement. Like, I like using PGP as a good example. PGP is brilliant. PGP would solve a lot of problems that we have with email. But the implementation of PGP in your average email client is not something an average user is able to accomplish. Being able to implement PGP as a usable system for your email, and after that being able to build your web of trust and being able to get your reputation high enough so that they'll be able to accept your public key without any questions asked is still something that for your normal everyday user sounds completely ludicrous, because they can just go to Gmail and hit send. That's so much simpler, right? And we need to find a balance between what works and what's actually good. And that's what security is, I think, finding the balance between usability and security.
Thanks.
Okay, this is not a question actually, but response to your question. You asked why people are not using two-factor authentication. Of course, I cannot speak for all of us, but for myself, the reason for many services is that the dominant form of two-factor authentication is the combination of password and the SMS code. And in order to get the SMS code into your phone, you must reveal your phone number to the service. And that is something I don't want to do in the context of many services. For some services I have given it, but for many others I will not. Because the phone number is a sensitive piece of information. If it leaks, it can be used for SMS spamming, and if it leaks, especially with your other identifying information, such as your full name and address, it can be used for phishing attacks over the phone, for example. So I think choosing not to use two-factor authentication actually increases my security in a way.
There's other forms of two-factor security, and you're absolutely correct in that SMS and revealing your phone number is usually trade-off in terms of security. You could use something like the Google Authenticator or for most services that utilize it. A lot of 2FA services have an API for OAuth, which can also be utilized as I think it's the acronym is TOTP, but like two-factor authentication, transport something or the other. But there's a lot of different apps that will just create a randomly generated number that you can then pair against a universal clock, and then you can use that for 2FA if you don't want to give up your phone number.
Yeah, if the online service that I'm willing to use happens to use one of those alternative 2FA solutions, then I can use them. But if the service has only support for SMS, then I'm out of luck.
Yes.
But a good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we also launched our puzzle today. So if you like solving hard problems, go to puzzle.disobey.fi.
Yeah, a question about disobey actually. Well, maybe it's still a bit early to say since you have the call for program right now. But well, the last event was great. I thank you for then, and thank you again, and I recommend it to everyone. Anyway, do you expect that there will be another similar thing to crack like we had the GPS locator box last time, or is that a maybe? Or can you reveal it, or is it secret?
Let's say like this, I'm in discussions with the government.
Sounds good. I mean, I'll be definitely authenticating, so see you there. Thank you.
Hi. You suggested using password managers.
Yes.
But they kind of feel like putting all your eggs in one basket. So if your password manager gets hacked, then you have all your passwords everywhere. So
yeah,
would it kind of make sense to just know each and every one?
Yeah, by heart. Well, I mean, a password manager could be just a book in your locked drawer, right? then you have your passwords written down, and it's unlikely that an attacker will come through your door in Finland. We have very good locks. They're not easy to pick, unless you're AC Hobbs, I think. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. Then you're just hiding all your passwords behind one password. But I think the bigger issue is that if somebody manages to hack your computer, they'll have all your passwords anyway. So having them in a password manager that's on your computer isn't better or worse than not having it on your computer. It'll just make it easier for you to remember stuff.
Well, if you have access to different kind of online services where you go by password,
yeah.
Then if it's not stored on the machine, then how would they know? Or they would have to keep tracking me using the computer until
I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Like having the password manager in the cloud or having it locally on your computer?
Well, personally, I haven't used one.
Right. Yeah,
so,
I like to store mine locally, but then sync them with different services, so I have them on all my devices.
Okay.
I'm not gonna be an advertising person for whatever I'm using, but still, I use a password manager.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying everyone should. You can just do the high entropy password thing, and if 25 characters isn't good enough, take 8 words. Then you'll have 35 characters, and cracking a 35 character password is not something that will happen this century, I think. Maybe, I don't know.
Any more questions left? You can of course ask Benjamin later.
Yeah, I'll be around for a while.
He'll be there. Okay, if not, then
One more.
Okay, so what's the private secure communications app that you would recommend people use at this moment? I mean, you said that security is a function of time, so all of them will eventually become something else than secure, but...
Whoa.
Yeah.
There's 2 good ones. Weaker, which will actually destroy your message after you sent it and doesn't keep it on your server. If you use Weaker as a completely anonymous person, so you don't take it into your contacts or tell anybody else except the person you're trying to talk to, it's a utterly and completely secure way to communicate in current knowledge. The other good one is Signal, which utilizes good encryption. But there's good news if you trust the providers, because WhatsApp has end-to-end encryption and Facebook Messenger is providing end-to-end encryption if you enable it. So at least in theory, you should be able to utilize them without anybody being able to eavesdrop from the sidelines. That doesn't mean that Facebook won't be able to eavesdrop on you if you use Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. But yeah, so Signal and Weaker probably.
Okay, thanks.
I just wanted to ask that, have you got any recommended sites or channels that could provide more information about hacking?
I have a few, yeah. They're on the screen. No, depends on what you want to focus your discipline on. There's a lot of really good ones. We tried to aggregate what's interesting to us on our feeds and then try to share that information. But I think most of information security is happening on Twitter. So if you follow Twitter and you follow somebody who is information security, see who they follow and you start following them, then you'll start like seeing where they're getting information from, and it'll grow and you'll have an understanding of what is current topics in security at any given time.
Okay, thanks.
All right, cool.
Okay, if not, then thank you, Benjamin, for the presentation.